Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie. This is episode number 896 for September 8th, 2021, featuring our Happy Hour live webcast from last Friday, September 3rd. Our guests are Brent Elliott of Four Roses Bourbon, Darryl McNally of Lemavadi Irish Whiskey, and Christopher Coates, the editor of Whiskey Magazine. If you're listening to one of these audio versions of our webcasts for the first time, please note the streaming platform we use to produce the live webcasts with guests from all over the world isn't quite perfect. It emphasizes video quality over audio quality, so you will hear some glitches from time to time in this episode, even though we have gone through and cleaned up as many as we can. We use that platform because it allows us to feed the same live webcast to our YouTube channel, Facebook Live, Twitter, and Twitch, all at the same time, 5 p.m. New York time every Friday night. By the way, this Friday's webcast will be on location at the American Whiskey Convention in Philadelphia. It's at the Independence Seaport Museum, and if you live in the area, please come out and say hello that night. Thanks as always to the presenting sponsors of WhiskyCast, Redbreast and Dewar's, for making our live webcasts possible, along with the segment sponsors on our podcast each week, Writer's Tears, Sagamore Spirit, and Oban. Now, on with the show. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to WhiskyCast Live, the Happy Hour webcast. It's September 3rd, Friday afternoon. We start off a whole new month, and I'm Mark Gillespie. Glad to be with you on this Friday afternoon, Friday evening, maybe even Saturday morning, depending on where you are in the world right now. Getting lots of comments already coming in. Graham Fraser is sitting in a bar in the West End of Edinburgh sipping Bowmore 15-year-old Darkest, wanting to know what other folks are doing. Nurse Dave's Shaving World is on his deck in California with the day off. Crump the cask hole just got home from work deciding what to pour. Let's see. Nick Kent saying, good evening, everyone. And Nurse Dave says, Mark, there's a big clear phallus right in front of you. And we can sort of explain why that is, because one of our guests right now is Christopher Coates, the editor-in-chief of Whiskey Magazine. And how are you, Christopher?
I'm very well and very glad to be here. Happy to be joining you.
You can explain this better than I can because, well, I won it, but you presented it. We've not shown this publicly until now. It was announced a few months ago, but explain what this is and why you guys were so delusional as to think I deserved it.
No, not at all. No. So as many of the viewers may know, Whiskey Magazine has presented something called the Icons of Whiskey. That's right. You are an icon of whiskey. And we've been presenting these awards for many years now, and pretty much they seek out the very best people and places in the world of whiskey. So whether that's distillery managers, communicators like yourself, or we also look at places like distillery visitor centres, and pretty much we want to get a snapshot of the industry and really put that forward to consumers in a way that that perhaps, I suppose, there's no other celebration quite like it of the great and good of the industry. And importantly, it's very distinct from the competitions that are more common, which is about taste of the actual product, which of course is very important too. But we couldn't give you an award for that.
As Tabitha points out from England, another trophy you can't drink out of.
Oh.
You know what? I'm okay with that. I'm good with that. And it was an honor. And if I remember correctly, this is only the second time that the magazine has presented this award for Communicator of the Year, right?
Yes. So it's funnily enough, it's actually something that came along relatively late in the day. I mean, the Icons have been going for the best part of a decade, and I, certainly in the last couple of years, we really felt that there was something amiss with not championing communicators like yourselves. Obviously, we do a lot of communication, but it's nice to look over the fence and pat our industry colleagues that we think do a fab job on the back too, and you're one of them.
I appreciate it, and I want to bring in a couple of other folks who have won these awards as well. Our pal Brent Elliott from Four Roses in Kentucky, and Darryl McNally with, and I want you to pronounce this for me, Darryl, because I have no frickin' idea how to pronounce it. I've pronounced it 6 different ways. How do you pronounce this whiskey?
Lemavadi.
Lemavadi. Okay, that's one I hadn't tried yet. So
Yeah,
you guys have. Go ahead, Darryl.
Yeah, we had to actually spell it out for a few people and break it into like syllables as well to say sort of Lemavadi. So it's Irish for leap of the dog. So as I say, Lima, as I'm thinking of Lima, Lemavadi. Yeah.
Okay, and Brent, you've won these awards a few times for not only Distiller of the Year, Master Distiller / Blender of the Year, Visitor Center of the Year. You've got a few of these around the distillery in Lawrenceburg, don't you?
Yeah, we've got them hanging along the walls in the Visitor Center. We're very proud of these awards.
I'm glad to hear it.
Well, thank you again for that, Christopher. And tell us what else you're working on at the magazine right now.
Oh, what aren't we working on? It's a wonderful time to be in media, and particularly in whiskey media at the moment. I mean, we're growing our stable of magazines. A couple of years ago, we launched a sister title to Whiskey Magazine, which is all about American whiskey. We've actually just launched a couple of years ago. We also launched a publication about gin. That's looking at the global gin scene. We have an annual about rum, which is hopefully going to go quarterly in the near future. We also starting to move into film. So something that I can announce here that actually the news has only actually gone public today, but we're going to be publishing our first full-length documentary film in October, which will be about a very prominent Speyside master distiller and his 60th anniversary in the whiskey industry. And then aside from that, of course, when you are a whiskey media company, the natural thing for the company to do is to purchase a castle in Speyside and create the ultimate home for the whiskey lover. So that's what we're doing as well. So we've about a year ago we purchased a house called Rothes Glen. I think most people would probably call it a castle. We call it a house, but it's definitely a castle. And that was built in the late 1800s. It was actually designed, the architect was a certain Mr. Doig, who any whiskey fan will know had a hand in many a distillery design. And we actually amazingly have his original drawings hanging in the house as well. So it really is going to be hopefully a point of pilgrimage for whiskey fans. It's going to be for private use. It's for sort of private events, sporting trips, things like that. But it's just outside Rothes, so you're sort of almost within stumbling distance of pretty much every Speyside distillery.
And we should explain that this little 2 or 3 bedroom shack is not the Rothes house that is tied up with Glenrothes Distillery just up the hill next to the graveyard, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's not it's some distance from that manse. It's nowhere there. It's pretty much when you're coming, if you're driving out of Rothes, so you've gone past Glengrant Distillery on your left, past the lovely roundabout, and you've taken that road and you're driving to Elgin. It's a couple of miles up the road, and you think, my God, there's a blooming great castle on the road, which you can see a lot better now because we've cleared some of the bushes and things, and you can get a good view of it now from the road. So that's where we are.
And your boss, Damian Riley Smith, of course, is a legend in the whiskey industry, having founded the magazine many years ago. Does he have you on gardening duty on the weekends now, too, in addition to running the magazine, or what?
Well, exactly. It's all that physical labor. It keeps me looking young, you see. You've got to be multi-talented. No, it's I am actually going up there next week. If I get handed a pair of secateurs on the way in, I'll know that you had this was clearly a prophecy. Either that or you'd been in touch with him beforehand.
Well, let's talk, Brent. I want to talk to you for a second now about this year's 2021 limited edition, because got to taste it with you on a Zoom call earlier this week, and well, this is all I have left of it besides what's in my glass, but this was well done. Just another stunning annual release from you guys. Tell me what went into this one.
Well, this one, like every year, it's going to be unique. It's going to be a combination of different recipes to create something that's, set apart from the years past, and all part of how we do the different recipes. This particular year had 4 recipes. It's a 12-year-old, 14-year-old, and 2 16-year-old batches went in.
And go ahead.
And With this one, to go into the yeast strains and the mash bills a little bit, we do the 2 mash bills, the 5 yeast strains, so we have the 10 recipes that we work on. These particular recipes, one of them is the high rye mash bill with the delicate fruity yeast. Another one is the low rye mash bill with that delicate fruity yeast. Both those are 16 years old. Then we have a Q yeast strain in there that's 14, and the K yeast strain, which is the one that creates the delicate, spicy flavors. So it's a nice mix of a lot of these complex, layered flavors. And in particular, I think that Q strain that typically creates like floral notes at younger ages. At this age, it takes on somewhat of a candied flavor and aroma. And when that melds with the delicate fruit of those VE strains, the other strains in there, it really creates a really unique, berry-like, layered, very full-bodied bourbon.
We are getting some breakup on your connection there, Brent, but this is the first time in a number of years that the Q strain of yeast has shown up in the small batch limited edition, right?
Yeah, it's been about a decade since it was in.
Why did you bring it back this year after so many years out?
Well, I try different things each year, and coming into this year, I was kind of conscious of the fact that we hadn't used the Q in a while, and so I just started toying with that as sort of the top note component for different blends, and I sort of ended up down that road, and all the test blends kept getting better and better, and I was really happy with not only how different it was from years past, just how good it is on its own, just richness and complexity.
Brent, I'm going to ask you to disconnect and then reconnect in because we are getting a really bad audio connection. You are dropping out. So I'm going to ask you to disconnect and then reconnect back into the website, and we'll see if we can get a better connection this time around. And
okay.
So we'll talk real quickly with Darryl. And Darryl, tell us about what prompted you to start Lemavadi, now that I've got it right, I think.
Yeah, what a story. I think I was talking to you not so long ago, Mark, and I had loads of ideas about creating my own brand. But Lemavadi is where I live, where I was born and bred. As I say, it's an old distillery dating back to 1750. So again, arguably one of the oldest distilleries in the world. It was established as a company in 1750, and it was part of that route, if you like, that Bushmills talked about with Sir Thomas Phillips. Sir Thomas Phillips actually lived in Lemavadi. He built Newtown, Lemavadi. So I suppose I was lucky to be born and bred here. And about 10 years ago, far-out relatives of mine was tracing their family tree, US relatives, and they were amazed that I was master distiller at Bushmills at that time because they were able to trace, on my mother's side, the McLaughlin family, back to owning Lemavadi Distillery in 1880. So my brother worked at Bushmills. He was a distiller. I was a distiller. There's only the two of us. So it was a bit of a coincidence, but sort of a little bit freaky, if you like, that whiskey's been running through our veins for years, and here's us only really finding out that our family actually owned Lemavadi back in 1880. So although I've been working for multiple distilleries, built Dublin Liberties distilleries, which was great, loved the time doing that. It was part of my bucket list, to build a distillery from scratch, create some great brands with the Dubliner, Dublin Liberties, Dead Rabbit, all the good stuff we talked about. But Lemavadi was always sort of pulling on the heartstrings, Maybe it was the family haunting me because I was dreaming about it at night, when I was making whiskey. I'm thinking, I wonder what the original mash bills were. I wonder what the family worked at. I wonder, all those crazy things that goes through maybe normal people's head, but definitely my head. And so Lemavadi was haunting me and pulling at the heartstrings. So I always wanted to try and resurrect that, reclaim it, revitalize it. And I was quite lucky because I was just pulling it all together. And then Whistlepig heard a little rumor that, I might be interested in getting into doing my own brand. So it was a bit of coincidence as well, because I met them at some of the sort of American shows, the Whiskey Fest and whatnot. And we always sort of shared the old banter about, American whiskey with an E and Irish whiskey with an E. And, those Scotch guys, leave out the E, that's E for excellence and all that sort of funny stuff, with the ha-ha at the shows. But they said, no, seriously, we want to get into Irish whiskey as well. We'd love to, partner up with you if it's something you're genuinely serious about. So I told the story about Lemavadi and why it was pulling at the strings and why that, if I didn't do it now, I'd never do it. So we got together, we got speaking, and lo and behold, we were able to announce there a couple of months ago that we're going to do a partnership where Whistlepig are, dipping their toe for the first time into a different category, apart from the American rye, straight rye, etc. wanted to get into Irish whiskey because they believe Irish whiskey is on fire in the US as well. So it was a great partnership, and as I say, I got to meet all the team, and we think very much the same. And lo and behold, Lemavadi's been born. So really looking forward to it, and really looking forward to bringing it back to existence and reclaiming it for the family.
And this is the bottle of Lemavadi, and I got to admit, your bottle looks a lot better than the Whistle Pig bottles. It's a really classy design with what looks like that, almost like the boil ball from a still up here at the top.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a bit of a story to that too, Mark. As I say, I found an old bottle that dated back to the late 1800s. So brought in some creative, designers. Worked with Dom Vokent, who worked for Casamigos and whatnot. So we wanted to bring out the old bottles. So there's all these new brands that are coming out, and they're going titanium plated and gold plated, and this and that. I wanted to go back to the old way. So when I seen an old bottle with the history and heritage that Lemavadi has, the bottle, I wanted to bring it as close as possible to what the old bottle was. So you have that blob head on it, which is very much in keeping with the late 1800s bottles. We keep a little bit of bubble frit through it as well, like sort of almost like imperfections in the glass. And again, kept the old Lemavadi typography. So it was the writing back in the late 1800s. We kept that style of writing, and really, rather than producing something that was sort of new and leading edge and innovative, we left the whiskey to do the innovation, but kept the design and packaging very much to the old traditional way Lemavadi was. Because it was never broken back then, so why try to change it?
Brent, let's see if you're back now. Can we hear you okay? You can hear us, right?
I can hear you fine, yeah. How do I sound?
Okay, you sound much better this time around, out in the central Kentucky hills. And tell us about the lottery that's underway now for the limited edition small batch.
Yeah, this was something we started last year, primarily because of COVID. Years past, we would just announce the release date, and people would line up, and we'd sell the limited edition from the visitor center that way. Last year, we went to a lottery system, and we're doing that again this year. And it's pretty simple. You can go to our website and go through the links. Go to bourbons, you go to limited editions, then click on 2021, and you can register right there. And if you're chosen, you'll be given a pickup time, and so it's much easier. The way we've done in the past. I mean, maybe not as much fun. I know a lot of people actually enjoy waiting in line. There's a lot of camaraderie, but this will be a lot smoother and, of course, safer for everyone.
But it will also be available at retailers around the U.S., right? And how about internationally this year? Absolutely.
Yeah, we have 14,500 bottles thereabout in the U.S., and there will be an allocation apart from that in Europe.
And we have a question for you, and Christopher is happy about that. We had a question about talking about Europe here, and I'll throw this to Christopher. Dave Kuhn has always wondered how hard it would be to nominate Jim McEwen for an MBE. It seems like something Whiskey Magazine might be able to help with. Do you know anything about the process for getting someone nominated? I've done a little bit of research on it, but it's not that hard to do, right?
Yeah, it's not something that I've been personally involved with, but I know a few people that have had peripheral involvement in a few other whiskey personalities ending up with MBEs. So yeah, it's a very good point, and I would be surprised if there aren't machinations going on for something like that already.
Sorry about that.
Less of a question, more of a suggestion.
Yeah, no, it's because anybody really can do it. There's a form on the UK government's website. If you just look up Queen's Honors List, it'll take you to on Google, it'll take you to a website where you can actually nominate someone. And if I remember correctly, you don't even have to be a British citizen to nominate someone, but that person does have to be a British citizen to accept it. So,
well, maybe it can start here. Jim McEwen, watch out.
And we have another question for you from Chris Ratcliffe. With media now being so immediate in terms of spreading information, how does having that funny print lead time of 2 or 3 months change your approach to reporting? And do you get frustrated with embargoes? I know I do, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But How does it
Yes.
affect you guys?
Yeah, the short answer to the second question is yes. Although we're in a very privileged position that because we've been working with the industry for so many years now, we sometimes get a little sneak peek at things quite a bit earlier. So that does mean that generally, when we are given enough notice, we are able to get stories out in a timely manner. Although it's not something that I personally get too het up about. I mean, obviously the media landscape's changed a hell of a lot since the magazine was launched in 1998. Obviously there are, blogging wasn't really a thing back there. Certainly podcasts weren't a thing. Yeah. And I think that, what the real value that a print publication can still bring to the table is that we like to give people that opportunity to, first of all, to switch off from these things for a time, which particularly after the last 2 years is sometimes appreciated. And sometimes you just want to sit back, pour a dram, get a magazine out, and also to read long form content. I have tried reading long form content digitally. I think most people struggle. Certainly the research that's been done suggests that most people do struggle with it. So certainly my focus since I took over as editor is really leaving the news related stuff that's very, very timely, that's going to be out of date by the time the magazine, gets over on the boat to the US. That goes on the website. The magazine's all about, sometimes I'd call it even slow journalism, sort of looking back on something 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later, saying, okay, well, what was the impact of that particular blender's appointment at that distillery, or what did this particular product that was released do? Did the ripples go out in the pond from that and influence the rest of the industry? And that's, hopefully the benefit of having lots of space to, drop a 2,000 word article that people can really sink their teeth into. And that's something that I still believe really only works in print.
And just to give you an example of how embargoes work, and Brent can speak to this just a little bit, but I won't put you on the hook for this one, because you'll notice that my bottle of the limited edition small batch is pretty well shot. That's because we had a press tasting the other day. I believe it was Monday afternoon, 4:30ish or so, with Brent on Zoom. And everybody agreed that we weren't going to talk about it until 9 a.m. the next morning, when the news releases went out and it was officially announced, or something. 9 a.m. I think was the exact time, something like that. Well, someone actually, and I will not mention that person's name, went out on Twitter and posted a photo of this sample bottle Monday night after the tasting and said, I was tasting the 2021 limited edition small batch with some friends. Embargo broken. Kind of hard to keep it in these social media days. And normally my policy is that I will honor embargoes as long as everybody else that's under one does the same. But the minute somebody screws up and breaks it, all bets are off. This time around, I went ahead and held off and just said, you know what? I'm not going to die on that hill today. We got more important things to worry about. But that's what happens with stuff like this. And Brent, I know it. I'm just using you as an example. I know you didn't set that. It was set by people well below your pay grade that had no control over this stuff, right?
Yeah, and I wasn't aware it was broken, but unfortunately, that was less than 24 hours. So whoever set that, I guess, was considerate of you guys. You didn't have to wait too long, and I think you didn't have to wait too long to try the samples either, whether that was intentional or just happenstance.
It happens. And to be fair, everybody knew it was coming because, one, it always comes this time of year, 3 weeks before Kentucky Bourbon Festival time. And also, if you look at the TTB's online database, you know it's coming 6 months out because you guys have to get the label approvals. So I've always wondered, and maybe you guys can speak to this, you and Darryl both. I'm always surprised that nobody submits fake labels to the TTB for an expression you're not going to bottle, like a Four Roses rye, for instance, just to throw everybody off and have everybody just going ballistic over this, and then go, yeah, we caught you guys. We're not actually doing that.
It's not a bad idea. Maybe like an April Fool's joke or something. But yeah, I haven't heard of anyone ever doing that. Not a bad idea. Throw everybody off. Keep them paying attention.
Graham Fraser points out on that McEwen thing, a UK honor can be nominated by anyone. The more support it gets, the greater the chances of it getting through. Now, Darryl, tell me how the deal with WhistlePig came about, because you're actually, if I get this correct, the way I read things, you actually send your whiskey over to Vermont to be bottled. Is that correct? Or are you doing it in Ireland and then they send it back to you guys to sell in Ireland and Northern Ireland?
Yeah, well, the first thing that we did it a little bit differently then, in that we're launching in the US first. So usually most Irish whiskies will launch in the domestic market first and foremost. Because of our new relationship with WhistlePig, or because of my new relationship with WhistlePig, there was a bottling facility in Vermont, in upstate New York. So we wanted to do a single malt, single barrel as well. So we're actually disgorging on the finish and the PX. We're disgorging into like totes or IBCs, and we're shipping IBCs then to the US. Disgorged, if you like, in Ireland, and then shipped to the US and bottled then individually. So on the Lemavadi, you'll have barrel number, bottle number, etc., based on a pen. So it does about 842 bottles. We wanted to do that. We wanted to launch in the US first because just exactly what you were saying, the TTB approval sort of come through quickly. With a new brand like Lemavadi, the red tape, if you like, or the legislation that you need to do in Ireland was going to take a bit longer. So we either had a choice. We either waited till we launched in Ireland, which would have been taken into 2022, and then launched in the US afterwards. I was excited to launch Lemavadi, so I said, let's launch it in the US first. It's very difficult. The bottling capacity in Ireland at the minute is very, very tight. So again, because WhistlePig had bottling facilities, we thought the best thing to do with the legislation of Irish whiskey is it has to be distilled in Ireland, has to be matured in Ireland, disgorged in Ireland, sort of thing, but it can be bottled anywhere in the world, sort of thing. So we ticked all the boxes and all the rules, got TTB earlier, and I left my name off just in case the media maybe took a bit of a run with the name off in the meantime, and we went for TTB approval and eventually got that through, printed the labels, and got moving in the US. So we're launching now in 5 states in the US. We're going California, Washington, the West Coast, Colorado, Arizona, and Florida. And then now we're just going for final approvals with the Department of Agriculture in Ireland and getting all the approvals for the labels and stuff here so that we can launch in the UK and Ireland, hopefully early November. Again, depending on the legislation and the time it takes. So that was the background to it as well. And there was a lot of questions asked, why are you doing it that way? It was purely to get it out in the market, for the next 5 months rather than missing that opportunity. So that's the main reason behind it.
Why did you decide to go single malt and single barrel? It seems it would have been easier just to do a traditional blended Irish whiskey to start off with, but you picked about as hard a combination as you can pull off to get it consistently right every time.
Yeah, you know me, Mark. I like to be challenged. So being a probably malt purist, being from the north of Ireland, and having sort of learned the ropes of Bushmills, if you like, or learned how to make whiskey at Bushmills, coming up through the ranks. I always seen Irish whiskey as being single malt first and foremost. So, before the taxes of the 1850s, they put a tax on the malted barley. Irish was very much known for triple distilled single malt. It was only after that the pot stills and the mix of malted and unmalted came about. So again, being where I'm from, and with a jokey heart, I believe that the north of Ireland maybe where the start of all whiskey was sort of started, if you like. And if you can imagine a little boat going over to Scotland and Islay, because where I live here and where I'm sitting tonight, it's only about 20 miles to where Islay is as the crow flies. So I have this imagination of my forefathers back in the day on the little rowing boats going over to Scotland and teaching the Scotch how to make whiskey correctly. Throwing a couple of pages over the boat, as we go through. I'm joking, guys. I'm joking. And as I say, the whiskey with the E and all that good stuff. But all my Scottish cousins know I'm only joking about this. So again, it's that sort of side of it. The more north you go in Ireland, the more it is going back to sort of the way Scotch makes single malts as well. So it's almost geography, coming into play there. So I wanted to make a single malt because I believe triple distilled single malt's the way Irish whiskey should be. And I wanted to do single barrel because I wanted it to hit a single, a premium level that people actually see that you're taking different casks and the difference between different casks, and quite openly saying that there's differences between the finishing cask, and that's part of the it's part of the fun of it as well, because the policy of drinking whiskey is about enjoying it and keeping the quality of the liquid there, but a little bit of change there between one single barrel to the next I see that as being fun as well.
Are you going to actually rebuild a Lemavadi distillery?
I really, really hope so. At the minute, I'm looking at planning and getting planning permission for that, which is not easy up this part of the world, but it's definitely on the cards. I think we need to grow the brand to a certain size first before it justifies building a £6-8 million distillery. But definitely, I'm moving forward with getting the plan permission and the design and all that going. And as I say, when the time's right, I'll have a discussion with Whistlepig and when the right time is to build a distillery here, hopefully on my farm here at home, which would be great. I would like to feed Aberdeen Angus cattle with the wet grains and feed some nice pedigree pigs with the pot ale and full sustainability and carbon neutral. That's the dream. But as I say, let's first of all get Lemavadi out there, bring it back from the 1750 established date. Tip a glass, have a cheers to my ancestors back in 1880. Get the brand out there known, have a bit of fun, and hopefully a distillery will come along in the next couple or 3 years, which I would only love to build on my family farm here. Yeah.
Well, you don't have to answer this question, but I'm betting that you've had a few good discussions with John Teeling and his boys at Great Northern in the last year or so. Is that fair to say?
I always talk to John and Jack and Steve, and I've been friends with them for absolutely years, as you know, Mark. We've had a long tradition. I've been in whiskey for 23 years. It's actually my birthday in about an hour and 30 minutes, so I turned 47, and 23 years of that has been in whiskey. So, I got married in 1998. I started in Bushmills in 1998 and went into my first house in 1998. Three of the most stressful things they ever say. But as I say, I couldn't look back on it. I loved every minute of it. It seems like 3 years. So yeah, Ireland's a small place. There only was 3 distilleries. So yeah, it's getting to the way, Scotland and how, trade whiskey and things like that. But yes, I've loads of conversation with loads of people in different distilleries who would have 4 or 5 year old single malt to sell, if that's what you're asking. Yeah.
Well, because somebody had to supply it. I know that you probably didn't get it from Dublin Liberties because it's too young as a distillery
Correct.
to get it from. So I look at the usual suspects, and knowing that John Teeling is in the bulk whiskey business, I got to put 2 and 2 together. You don't have to answer the question, and I'll let you off the hook here. And a bunch of folks are saying happy birthday to you, Darryl, and Crump and Tabitha and Daniel and a bunch of other folks. Christopher Goggins, my old buddy who I met first when he was working at Jameson's at the Visitor Center in Dublin. You got him his first distilling gig, didn't you, at Dublin Liberties? And I know he's watching tonight.
Good,
you want to bust on him a little bit while we have a chance?
Yeah. Hi, Christopher. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, Christopher wanted to get into production, and as I say, what a great guy. I always say if somebody's got the right personality and the right attitude, we can definitely take them into distilling. So I think, Christopher, you've been there now probably, correct me if I'm wrong, probably about over a year anyway, a year and a half. So yeah, he loves every bit of it, and yeah, I hope it's the right move for him, and I believe it is, because he did the ambassador, but he heard it from other distillers, and now he's living his dream, which is great. I smile for that, because that's the next generation of people making great whiskey in Ireland, and if I can play a part in that, happy days. Yeah.
Brent, tell us about what's happening at your place these days in Lawrenceburg, because I know you're getting ready to open your new visitors center later this fall after the Bourbon Festival, right?
Yeah, at the end of the year, it's a brand new facility. We've outgrown the current space, which seems like just yesterday we built that. That was completed in 2012. But yeah, we've outgrown that, and so we're moving into a new 14,000 square foot facility. And that's just the indoor space. Outside is even bigger than that. So it's going to be a beautiful space, really just to enhance the visitor experience for everyone.
And that really sort of completes the distillery expansion, doesn't it?
For now. Seems like we always hit those milestones and we think, okay, we're good now. But then, 6 months later, we turn around and there's something else that needs to be expanded just because of the rapid growth. But you're right. I mean, the bottling facility has been built. Distillery, we doubled capacity. That was completed in 19. Now with this, we're going to continue to add warehouses. So that's going to be an ongoing project. But for now, I think that's it for a little bit.
And that's the thing that you can do in Kentucky a lot easier than I know Darryl and his friends can do in Dublin and in Ireland, because I know that the Irish distilleries are always having all kinds of problems getting planning approval for new warehouses, right, Darryl?
Absolutely. It's I always use the analogy that, like, for every car with four wheels, you need a steering wheel, so you're building all these distilleries, but you don't have the maturation facilities there to cope with that. And especially when distilleries are built in like real areas of outstanding natural beauty, you're not going to get plan permission for these great big warehouses. So I think eventually, the Irish government and the Northern Irish government are beginning to listen that there's maturation warehouses need to be part and parcel of the growth of Irish whiskey. So I'd be a big pioneer for that. And I know the Irish Whiskey Association has, went to the government and planning and said, guys, the capacity in Ireland is here. We're going to grow it to here. And in order to get to that, we need maturation facilities of ABC. So eventually we're beginning to see now some facilities in different parts of Ireland beginning to open up, which is great because, as I say, for every car with four wheels, you need a steering wheel. And we have to keep it. And same with bottling. Now I'm beginning to see there's opportunities for capacity for bottling in Ireland too. And again, I think as an Irish Whiskey Association, as a group of people, we need to just monitor that and see where it goes, because that's the growth of the category, and we need to be mindful of that.
Brent, I know you were saying on the Zoom call with the writers the other day that this is the first time you've actually had excess distilling capacity at Four Roses in years, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, once we complete the expansion, we've got this extra capacity now, and we're not using it all. We know that 5, 6, 7 years down the road, which is the age of most of our products, we're not going to double our sales overnight. So we're just kind of stepping that up gradually. But that always comes up because I'm always asked about new expressions, rye whiskeys or any kind of experimentation or innovation, and it hasn't really been an option in the past. Every bit of capacity had to go just to our current lineup of products. But, fortunately with this extra capacity, now will be the time that we'll start looking at the possibilities.
What might you look at in terms of innovations? Cask finishes are always an option. Ryes are always an option. What might you look at?
Well, I think those two are the obvious ones, and I think for good reason. I think those are really legitimate innovations. They're what consumers are looking for. I know just about every conversation I have with anyone about Four Roses bourbon, that question comes up about rye whiskey. So that would be a logical next step. And I think the reason that comes up a lot is because we're always talking about our mash bill, and both of them are very high in rye. So it's a logical step. But there are no plans currently, but I'm not going to say there won't. Those discussions will start soon, and we're going to do it. Now's the time for those options.
Well, I got to admit, I would love to see just a regular Four Roses cask strength edition, because this limited edition small batch is at, I think, 57.2. And it tastes outstanding at that. I'd love to see a regular expression at cask strength. And I know you don't have too many of those, right?
Well, the opportunity you have to get those would be with the private barrel program. And those are non-chill filtered cask strength. And we do 50 plus of those a month. They're not the easiest to find. They go to different retailers all over the country. So 50 barrels a month, that sounds like a lot. But unfortunately, that's all we can do right now, because it's an older expression too. It's 8 to 12 years of age. And we offer all 10 recipes in that program. So it's very popular. And people find these bottles and, they're off the shelf about as soon as they hit the shelves. So, that was when we released the small batch select in 2019. That was kind of the idea. That's not cask strength, but we knew that the modern consumer was looking for something higher proof and non-chill filter. That was kind of the basis, apart from the small batch concept. That was the basis of the small batch select. And that will be available in all 50 states next year.
We have a question for you, Christopher. Well, we have a couple of questions. First, from Dave Kuhn. He wants to know, what are you drinking? What was in that glass? And then, what's the craziest rare bottle you could drink right now if you wanted to?
Well, that would be telling. What I've got in my glass right now is the new Ben Romack Contrasts Peat Smoke. which is a highly or more highly peated version of Benromach. It's at 55 ppm. That's what it says on the label anyway. I'm enjoying it. It's very nice. I just opened it today, so that's been very nice. Although I think I still they did a 2009, I think it was, vintage a few months back, and I think that one's still pipping this one to the post in terms of my favourites. But it's still Benromach, and it's still nice. And anybody that reads my reviews, that even when tasting blind, I'm still a Benromach fanboy at heart. So there it is. But I have a little Four Roses to round things out afterwards. So I'll be jumping into that in a second.
Have you had a chance to try the Lemavadi yet? I know it's not over in England yet, but I didn't know if they'd gotten you some.
No, not yet, no. But I'm sure it will come winging our way at some point.
I'm sure there'll be a bottle on the way from tomorrow. Don't worry.
Fantastic. And the other question, I'm not sure what the answer to that. I think there's I have some Gordon MacPhail. I think I've got some sort of 50s Glenlivet or something kicking around. I also was very kindly sent some Prima and Ultima samples from Diageo. So you take your pick. There's always some nice things being sent.
I will trump you on that because I did not get Prima and Ultima, but I still have a little bit of the Gordon and MacPhail 80-year-old Glenlivet.
Yeah.
And I want to give you just a quick teaser to the podcast this week. We'll mute everybody for just a second here because I had a chance to taste this with Stephen Rankin from Gordon and MacPhail, and we'll just give you a little preview of the podcast for this weekend.
You hear of some things being someone's life's work. Well, this isn't one man's life's work. This is a family and colleagues' life's work to get this. So, and I've noticed, Mark, you've been nosing this whiskey. And I would like to hear your thoughts on this incredible elixir.
I am stunned because I've had the chance to taste the Mortlach 70, the 75, the Glenlivet 70, and now the 80. And I only wish we had a time machine to go back to 1940 and fill a couple of more casks like this one, because this is vibrant, fruity. There's a nice little spiciness to it, some touches of peach cobbler and apricot notes, and I am stunned by it. It is just outstanding and amazing that there's no oak in this whatsoever. Maybe just a subtle touch on the nose, but I'm not getting any oakiness at all after 80 freaking years.
You know, everything you've just said is exactly, I teach this and I hope you experience this, because when I started to smell it, for anybody listening to the podcast, the color of this it's rich and it's dark, but I didn't call it mahogany but what it is, it's just a really dark amber. And when the light catches it, it's like looking in a fire and seeing glowing coals come back at you. Some are a bit redder, some are dark orange. You get flashes of gold there. And it's stunning.
Bill Ricker points out, this suggests it wasn't a new cask 80 years ago, which is what you want for a cask used that long. No, this was one of the old, I believe, Williams and Humbert, and I could be wrong about that, transport sherry casks that were built down in Jerez, Spain, that were used to haul sherry up to Scotland back in the day. So,
exactly.
And if you go to their base, looks like he's. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you go to the basement at Gordon MacPhail, you can actually still see the old cask elevator where they used to roll in these butts when they were actually bottling sherry there, and then you can see how they moved them around, and all the apparatus is still there, and it's an amazingly tangible link to that whiskey you've got in your glass there, in that little bottle there.
I'm hanging on to this one for a little bit, but spoiler alert, I've already posted my tasting notes for it. This is one of 9 whiskeys I have scored 98 points. And I've never given a higher score. It's that good. So we'll have that interview on the show this weekend. But let's, Spirit Bomb points out, who's going to be the first to release a century-old whiskey? It's going to be Gordon and MacPhail, because they're the only ones who have been keeping that whiskey around that long.
Yeah.
Guys, Darryl, Brent, tell us how hard it is to really hold whiskey much longer than 20 years without losing a lot of it, unless you've got just a perfect cask, right?
Yeah, in Kentucky, it's impossible. And you can keep it longer than 20, but there is a finite time period. At some point, it's going to be, of course, it's going to go over the hill and it's going to become too oaky and going to lose any character that makes it, a bourbon. But at some point, with the climate in Kentucky, you're going to be stuck with nothing. An 80-year-old cask would be as dry as bone in our climate.
Yeah.
Well, in Ireland, as I say, most Irish whiskies don't go much higher than the 20, 25-year-old sort of thing. And even then, like the loss is starting a young malt, for example, is 2N plus 3. So, a 5-year-old malt will be 13%. By the time you get to a 10-year-old malt, it levels out at the 2N, so that's about 20%, and it starts to claw back a little bit then after 10-year-old. But still, when you're rolling about 21-year-old Bushmills, for example, it's like rolling an egg. It's like half empty, if you like. So some of the oldest that I would have dealt with was maybe probably 1978, and that was about 5 or 6 years ago. So what does that work out at? Probably 35, 40-year-old sort of thing. But as I say, it takes a lot with Irish whiskey. It takes a lot of the woody character then, so you really need to change the barrels up after probably 15, 16, 18 years. You need to be changing that barrel to get the consistency and the blend and the flavours, if you like, because Irish is that bit lighter, smoother, whatever way you want to use from a descriptor point of view, that the barrel needs to be changed a wee bit more often. So, and again, then when you fill the barrel up and cuts the losses a bit, yeah.
Brent, tell us what your Angel share is the first year. Do you know offhand?
It's probably in the neighborhood of 6%. The thing is, we don't ever dump a barrel at 1 year, so it's hard to gauge that exactly. But if you sort of extrapolate backwards where the loss is from 5 forward, that's about where it comes out.
I bring these questions up about old casks just because I know Christopher has written about this, about people investing in casks of whiskey. And while I understand the desire to do so, part of me still says it's about the dumbest damn thing you can do in a lot of ways, to buy a single cask of whiskey and hope that it's actually going to work out. And Darryl, since you're bottling single cask whiskeys, I'd like to get your take on that. Well, you both do single barrel whiskeys. I'd like to get your take on that. You really are playing a craps game when you're trying to pick a single barrel, right?
Yeah. Well, what I did with the finish in Lemavadi as an example, I think it's a case you wouldn't be going to a new cask or barrel supplier to do that sort of thing. You need to have a relationship for multiple years. So, when I went to do finishes on Lemavadi, for example, I went to Antonio Paez Labata down in Jerez, a company that I've dealt with for 20 years. So I knew the quality of the cask was going to be there. I knew it was going to be seasoned for the length of time that we expected it to be seasoned. With Lemavadi, what I wanted, I didn't want all the original whiskey for 4.5 years has all been in bourbon first fill. So you have all that lovely vanilla, you have all that spiciness, you have all the characteristics of the American wood and the ex-bourbon cask. What I wanted to do in the finish Lemavadi was not to hit it with a young European oak. I wanted to have old sherry casks, old PX casks that have been reseasoned for 2 years plus. So therefore, when I put my Lemavadi in as a single barrel, one, I trusted Antonio Paez Labata to do exactly what they said in the tin, because that's my it's my trust in them to know that if I'm going down a single barrel route, that I wouldn't want to do it with anybody other than a partner like that. So I knew that the consistency of what they did for each barrel was always right, because I put my faith in them for all my life, really, if you like. So with Lemavadi, I knew that there would be slight changes, as there always will be, between one barrel to the next. But at least there would be a range of consistency there that would prevail. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Brett, you have an interesting issue when you do your single barrel releases for Four Roses. And I'm talking the mainstream single barrel, not the the barrel select issues. You pick one of those 10 recipes just for consistency's sake, right?
Yes. Those are always the same recipe.
Tell us about that recipe and what makes it work so well.
That was selected well before my time at Four Roses, but I'm really glad that Jim, who I assume was the one that chose that one. That's the high rye mash bill with the delicate fruity yeast, and that's just sort of center mass of our flavor profile. At 7-8 years, which is the age we bottle that, I think that particular recipe is really hitting a sweet spot. It's sort of the crossroads of the oak mingling with the original character, the ripe rye, the delicate fruit. So it's the perfect age, the perfect recipe.
Chris, I want to get your thoughts on this, Chris.
I'd agree. I mean, that's what's in my glass, and it's let me put it this way: it's one of the expressions that I go out and buy again when the bottle's empty. So that was, I think you're right. There's definitely something right being done there. It's unfortunately, Four Roses isn't necessarily a brand that here in the UK lots of people would have had a lot of exposure to the full range. I know there's a lot of things that are sort of US exclusives and things, but whenever you bring up the brand, this is usually the expression that people here in the UK mention, and it's sort of a once you know.
I think it's fun to hear you say that, Christopher, because I know I've seen at the whiskey show in London, I've seen the Four Roses guys working the table there in the past, and they seem to get a big crowd around that table. So I know there's a lot of awareness of Four Roses.
Exactly, and I think certainly among sort of my friends and things, this is what gets them in. This is what gets them onto the brand and off to festivals.
So I want to get your take on the whole barrel thing, because I know you wrote about this recently for the magazine in terms of investing.
Yeah, I mean that's it's a thorny thing, and I mean I think the issue is first I'll jump off from where you were talking about sort of consistency when you're trying to pick a single barrel. I think it's the motivations behind buying a cask are very important, and what exactly people understand to buy the word investment is also very important. So I'll start with the first one. I mean, if you are buying 1 or 2 or 3 barrels for your whiskey club, and the intention is that they are going to be bottled, you're probably going to be doing that directly with a distillery. That's fine. There's particularly if it's being done directly with the distillery, there's very, very little risk there, unless something horrible happened to the distillery. Where it's very different is where people who tend not to have much knowledge of the whiskey category are perhaps being approached by organizations that have, quite sharp telesales practice. And they're saying, look, this is something you should put your life savings into. Come and buy 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 casks from us and remortgage your home and put it into this. And this is going to grow by X amount. And by the time your grandkids are at university, you're going to be able to buy them each a house. This kind of practice, and unfortunately there is a little bit of that going on at the moment. I've had verified reports of that, and that's only really the tip of the iceberg. That we have a lot of issues around compliance around exactly what ownership means in the industry as well. I think if you buy a cask from most Scotch distillers anyway, if you're a very wealthy person, you're lucky enough that you can go to a big name distiller and say, I want to buy a cask of your 30-year-old. Generally, you're not actually buying the cask, you're buying the future contents of that cask. And you're actually signing a contract, effectively saying, I'm giving you money now for you to bottle that whiskey for me. That's very different from if you were a broker or a revenue trader, which is the sort of the proper HMRC term for somebody that deals in duty suspended goods. That's very different from somebody that's going to a bulk whiskey supplier and saying, okay, I want to buy casks for my either independent bottling business or my brokerage business. The tax rules are completely different. People are being told that they're not going to have to pay any tax on their investment, which can be true if it's very small numbers of casks they're buying, but the rules are a little bit grey. Unfortunately, you read the article. There's a lot of very grey areas here, and pretty much when it comes to investing with the idea to make money, most of the time you're putting your faith completely in the company that you're investing with. And actually, what I've encouraged a few people who are sort of dead set on doing this, although I don't personally advise that it's done at all, but if they're dead set on doing it, I say, look, think of it not as that you're buying these casks, but more like you're investing in this company that is investing in casks. That's maybe a safer way to to think about it, and maybe just invest in crypto or something if you really want to.
Please
risk.
don't start on crypto.
If you really want to throw your money into something that might disappear overnight.
And Nick Kent asks, are delivery orders a must-have, or can it work another way? And Christopher, I'll let you take that one, or Darryl, because I'm not familiar with delivery orders.
Pretty much, if you certainly, if you're buying a cask of Scotch whiskey and you want complete control of it, i.e., if you fall out with the person that you've bought it off, and you want to go, nope, I don't want you to bottle it for me. I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. I want to take my cask and move it to another warehouse. If you don't have that delivery order and you aren't the registered owner of that cask with the warehouse in which it's being stored, you'll go to that warehouse, say, I want to move my cask, and they'll go, who the hell are you? Because that means the people you bought it off are still registered as the legal owner of that cask, as far as the warehouses is concerned. There are some legal grey areas around the actual word ownership, but functionally you don't own it.
And Brent, when somebody buys a cask from you in your private selection program, they're buying the contents of that cask. They're not buying that cask and then they can take it to someplace else and bottle it, right?
Correct. Yeah, and there's no risk in that because that's after the fact. It's aged. They have a relatively good idea of what the volume is, the yield's going to be in that barrel. So there's no risk in that. That's a great way to do
it. Exactly. That's the exact thing. If you go directly to a distiller, you're buying the liquid, you're having a private bottling done, which you can then either drink yourself or give to your friends. Usually you're not allowed to sell it.
Darryl, we cut you off there, Darryl. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. No, what I did, we had founders programs and cask investment casks and things like that. What I would always say to people is that, whiskey isn't a 3-year investment. Don't expect to put your money in and have it in 3 years' time, because that's not the investment. You need to be looking at a 10-year plan. You need to be looking at, distilleries that you think are going to, go, especially in Ireland, I'm talking about here, new distilleries that may in 10 years' time become super distilleries whereby, the value of that liquid will increase. So yeah, there's a bit of risk there, but I would always insist that the ownership will move to the investor as soon as they pay their money, and that they actually get a certificate of ownership. That means that or any warehouse that they're holding that cask will be 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 6, because I think over 6, then you become known as, a whiskey trader sort of thing. So as a personal investment, I have friends that I've, got casks for. I would say you have a certificate of ownership. I introduce them to the bond where it's been held. If you buy that cask and there's 5 years payment for maturation within the purchase of that cask, then that's validated before, they get the certificate of ownership. Therefore, that makes it authentic. It makes it real. The relationship then moves to them and the bond holder or the warehouse holder. As for somebody holding for investors, I wouldn't be comfortable with that at all. There has to be a clear transparency, in what you're getting, what your investment is. And people will ask you, what do you think my cask will be worth in 10 years? I says, I can only tell you what a cask of that quality would be worth if it was 10-year-old today. What would I buy a 10-year-old single malt of Irish for? I can't speculate on what it'll be in 10 years, because will the market be flooded? Will it not be market? Will Irish be that big that it'll ever get to 10-year-old? Who knows? I'm not. I only make the stuff. That's the easy bit.
Exactly. I mean, you could do a whole podcast on it, Mark.
Yeah, and we have. And to be fair, Brett and Darryl, you guys don't make this stuff to sit on a shelf as investment products. You make it for us to drink the stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Brett, you were about to say something, I think, and you stopped short.
I was just agreeing with that. Yes, made to be drunk. But it's something that the value is changing that rapidly. Of course, people are going to start speculating, looking for ways to make it an investment.
One of the things I said on social media this week, and I'll repeat it until my dying day, is that the best investment you can make in whiskey is to open the damn bottle, drink it with friends, drink it with fun people, and share it. And make memories, because those never lose value. And as I said, you guys don't make this stuff to sit on a shelf. So that, and the fact that 90% of the places, 90% of the time, you can't sell a bottle legally or a cask legally. If you get a barrel and you've got 250 or so bottles from that cask. You can't sell that stuff legally. Give me a break. Come on, you're going to wind up in jail if you're not careful. It's not worth it. So,
yeah, definitely.
Christopher, what's in the next issue of the magazine?
Well, that has actually just published today. So we're focusing on sustainable distilling this time. So we've looked at all sorts of different things. We've looked at distillers' relationship with the land. You know, you were mentioning feeding pot ale to pigs and draft to cows. You know, we've looked at that. We've looked a little bit at alternative energy options and efficiency options that exist today. We've looked outside of just production as well. I think Glenfiddich hit the headlines relatively recently with their powered by whiskey lorries, which we clarified are the lorries are powered by whiskey, not the drivers. But you know that in itself answered a question about the future of whiskey logistics that I'd been asking that question 12 months ago to the SWA when writing a previous piece about sustainability in whiskey. And, you know, people, when you said, what are the haulage companies going to move to? Is it going to be electric? Is it going to be some sort of LPG first or what? You know, people didn't know. There were lots of different trials going on. I remember being told something along the lines of currently that a lot of the systems that were in place could get you just about as far as Perth if you were coming down the road from Speyside. But if there was a traffic jam, you might get stuck and run out of fuel and things like this. So, you know, that was really great to see that hit there. I think the only area that I really want to explore more in the future, and there just isn't really the data for yet, is the alternative energy sources for producing heat in the distilleries. So Bruichladdich are doing a trial with hydrogen, not a whiskey distillery, but down in Cornwall. There are plans currently in for the UK's first geothermal powered distillery. So they're building a geothermal power plant, and there was going to be a distillery next to it. I mean, that's incredibly exciting because if that works and it proves to be economically viable, it could, you know, provide a blueprint potentially. I mean, their aim is to provide a blueprint for the future of the distilling industry to say completely zero carbon, obviously, once you've got all the equipment in place.
I keep saying that if you wanted to build a distillery that was carbon neutral, just put it beside Parliament in London or the state capitol in Frankfurt or the Dáil in Dublin, and you could run that sucker off all the hot air coming out of the politicians. And question for you also from Graham Fraser. Will Whiskey Magazine continue with paper copies for the foreseeable future? The prices increased, and does that reflect a reduction in sales, or does it mean that paper costs are going up and it costs more to mail the thing and ship it? How long will you stay paper and not go digital?
The vision is, I mean, we are a print publishing company. We will keep printing that damn thing until we just can't any longer. I mean, as long as it is both sort of environmentally and economically sustainable, we will continue to do it. The paper costs have gone up horrifyingly. It's a lot, and there's been quite a lot of volatility there as well. We try to absorb as much of it as we can. There is a lot of investment going on behind the scenes, though, as well. I mean, something that's that we don't tend to talk about publicly is that our team is expanding a lot. I mean, even in the 8 years that I've been in the company, we've more than doubled in size. There's a lot more resource coming on, and your pounds are well spent on extra resource and expertise. So it's not. Don't worry, I'm not driving around in a Whiskey Magazine Ferrari or anything yet.
Oh, we know you're not, because Damien owns the thing, and Damien, if anybody's going to drive a Ferrari, it's going to be Damien.
Oh no, not yet. No, there's everything's being reinvested in the company, and it's and hopefully is going to safeguard the next 21 years of our coverage of the whiskey industry.
Oh, of course, and we're getting some good comments here from other folks, and talking about sustainability, but we are at the end of our time here, and I want to thank all of you guys. Christopher Coates, the editor of Whiskey Magazine, Brent Elliott, our friend from Four Roses, the master distiller there, and Darryl McNally. Good luck with Lemavadi. Excellent whiskey. I'll have my tasting notes up for it this weekend. Well done. I've already posted my tasting notes on the website for the Four Roses limited edition 2021 small batch edition. So you can find those at the website, and I'll have those on the podcast this weekend. Once again, that's our Happy Hour live webcast from Friday, September 3rd, with Whiskey Magazine editor Christopher Coates, Darryl McNally of Lemavadi Irish Whiskey, and Four Roses Master Distiller Brent Elliott. You can watch our webcasts live every Friday, starting at 5 p.m. New York time, on the WhiskyCast YouTube channel, our Facebook page, Twitter, and Twitch. On-demand replays of all of our previous webcasts from the last 18 months are available at our YouTube channel. If you have comments about this webcast or our weekly podcasts that drop every Monday, get in touch with us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at WhiskyCast, or you can email us. The address is comments@whiskycast.com. Thanks to Dewar's and Redbreast, the presenting sponsors of WhiskyCast, along with our segment sponsors on the podcast each week, Sagamore Spirit, Writer's Tears, and Oban. WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2021, and comes to you from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening, and please stay safe.